Keep an eye out for the golden star during the video. If you spot it, comment the time you saw it, and you'll get a shout out in our next video. Happy hunting! The Comet's Curse. Elara's journey through eternal night. The night was as dark and unyielding as ever in the village of Nocturne. For generations, the village had been shrouded in perpetual darkness, the sun never rising, leaving its inhabitants in an eternal twilight. The thick fog that surrounded the village was almost palpable, swirling through the cobblestone streets and curling around the Gothic spires of the ancient buildings. The scent of damp earth and decaying leaves filled the air, mingling with the faint aroma of burning wood from the hearths. The air was heavy with the weight of countless secrets, and an oppressive silence hung over everything, broken only by the occasional distant hoot of an owl. Elara stood at the edge of the village square, her lantern casting a feeble glow that barely penetrated the gloom. She adjusted her cloak against the cold, the fabric rough against her skin, her breath visible in the frosty air. Her green eyes scanned the empty streets, searching for any sign of movement. It was an ordinary night in Nocturne, or so it seemed. Suddenly, a bright streak of light blazed across the sky, piercing through the darkness like a celestial arrow. The villagers, roused from their homes by the unusual brilliance, gathered in the square, their faces illuminated by the comet's radiant glow. Elara's heart quickened as she gazed upwards, mesmerized by the rare phenomenon. "What is that?" she whispered to herself, her mind racing with questions. The light seemed to bring the cold air to life, tingling against her skin, making her shiver with anticipation. The comet's tail shimmered with an otherworldly luminescence, casting an eerie light over the village. As it passed overhead, a deep, resonant chime echoed through the air. The ancient clock tower, silent for centuries, had suddenly sprung to life. Its hands, frozen at midnight for as long as anyone could remember, began to move, marking the passage of time once more. The villagers murmured in awe and fear, their eyes darting between the sky and the clock tower. An old man, his face lined with the wisdom of many years, stepped forward. "The old legend spoke of a comet that would bring change," he said, his voice trembling. "Could this be the sign we've been waiting for?" Elara's thoughts raced as she considered the implications. Could this comet be the key to breaking the curse that had plagued their village for so long? She had always felt a deep connection to the mysteries of Nocturne, and this event seemed to stir something within her, a sense of purpose that had long been dormant. As the comet continued its journey across the sky, the clock tower struck 12, its chimes reverberating through the village. The sound was both haunting and beautiful, a reminder of the passage of time that had been denied to them for so long. With each chime, the village seemed to come alive, as if awakening from a deep slumber. The villagers watched in stunned silence as the final chime echoed into the distance. Elara felt a strange energy in the air, a subtle shift that hinted at the possibility of change. She turned to leave the square, her mind filled with determination. She needed answers, and she knew just where to start. Back in her small, cluttered cottage at the edge of the village, Elara lit a series of candles, their warm light flickering against the walls. She carefully unwrapped a worn, leather-bound journal, one of the few possessions left to her by her parents. Flipping through the pages, she found the entry she was looking for, a detailed account of a mysterious map they had discovered years before their disappearance. They believed this map held the key to breaking the curse, Elara thought, tracing the faded ink with her finger. And now, with the comet's arrival, perhaps it's time to follow in their footsteps. Her parents had always been secretive about their research, leaving behind only fragments of their findings. Elara had spent countless nights poring over their notes, trying to piece together the puzzle they had left behind. Now, with the clock tower's chimes still echoing in her ears, she felt a renewed sense of urgency. "Elara, you have to be careful," she reminded herself, her resolve mingling with caution. The forest surrounding Nocturne was filled with unknown dangers, and the villagers' fear of the dark was not unfounded. But the thought of living in eternal night, never knowing the warmth of the sun, was a fate she could no longer accept. She packed a small satchel with essential herbs and potions, tools of her trade that might prove useful on her journey. With the map tucked safely inside her cloak, she took one last look around her cottage, drawing strength from the memories of her parents. "Tomorrow, I'll begin the search," she vowed silently. "Whatever it takes, I will find a way to break this curse." As the candles burned low, Elara lay down to rest, her mind filled with visions of the comet and the possibilities it heralded. Outside, the village of Nocturne remained cloaked in darkness, but for the first time in generations, there was a glimmer of hope. The sounds of the night began to fade as Elara drifted into a restless sleep, her dreams filled with images of the comet's brilliant light and the hidden truths it might unveil. Elara awoke to the soft flicker of candlelight casting dancing shadows on the walls of her small cottage. The events of the previous night played in her mind like a vivid dream: the comet, the clock tower, and the palpable shift in the village's atmosphere. Determined, she rose and dressed swiftly, her resolve solidifying with each passing moment. Today, she would begin her search for answers. The village of Nocturne, still cloaked in darkness, seemed to hum with a subtle energy. As Elara stepped out into the cobblestone streets, she noticed the villagers whispering in hushed tones, their faces a mix of hope and apprehension. The comet's passage had stirred something deep within them, a long-forgotten sense of possibility. The chill in the air bit at her skin as she made her way to the village square, where the ancient clock tower loomed overhead, its newly moving hands a constant reminder of the night's extraordinary events. The scent of damp earth and burning would mingled in the air, a reminder of the life that continued to pulse through Nocturne despite the curse. Elara glanced around, her eyes landing on the old man who had spoken of the legends the night before. He stood near the fountain, his weathered face illuminated by the lantern he held. "Good morning, Elara," he greeted her, his voice filled with a mixture of curiosity and concern. "Strange times, indeed. What do you make of it all?" "Good morning, Alden," Elara replied, giving him a nod. "I believe the comet might hold the key to breaking the curse. My parents left behind a map that could lead us to the answers we need." Alden's eyes widened in surprise. "A map, you say? Your parents were always ones for secrets and mysteries. If anyone can uncover the truth, it's you." Elara smiled faintly, appreciating the old man's encouragement. "I need to study the map and gather more information, but I fear there may be dangers ahead." Alden's expression grew serious. "Be cautious, Elara. The forest surrounding Nocturne is treacherous, especially now. But know that you have the support of the village. We've all lived in fear for far too long." With a determined nod, Elara turned and made her way to the village archives, a dusty, seldom visited building near the edge of the square. The archives held the accumulated knowledge and history of Nocturne, a treasure trove of ancient texts and forgotten lore. If there were any clues to be found about the comet and the curse, they would be here. The air inside the archives was cool and musty, the scent of old parchment and ink filling her nostrils. Elara set her lantern on a nearby table and began to sift through the stacks of books and scrolls, her fingers brushing against the rough surfaces. Hours passed as she pored over records of past comets, old legends, and accounts of the village's founding. Finally, she found a tattered journal that caught her eye. It was bound in cracked leather, its pages yellowed with age. As she carefully opened it, a small, folded piece of parchment slipped out and fluttered to the floor. Elara picked it up, unfolding it with delicate fingers. Her heart skipped a beat as she recognized the intricate drawings and markings. It was the map her parents had described in their journal. "This is it," she whispered to herself, her excitement mounting. The map depicted the village and its surrounding forest, with a series of cryptic symbols leading to a location marked with a star. Elara traced the path with her finger, her mind racing with possibilities. Just then, the door to the archives creaked open, and Elara looked up to see a familiar figure silhouetted in the doorway. It was Rowan, a young blacksmith and one of the few villagers who shared her insatiable curiosity about the world beyond Nocturne. "Elara, I heard you were here," Rowan said, stepping inside and closing the door behind him. "Is it true? Do you have a map that could lead us to the truth about the curse?" Elara nodded, holding up the parchment for him to see. Yes, it's my parents' map. I believe it shows the way to uncovering the secrets of the curse. But we must be careful. The forest is more dangerous than ever, and we don't know what we'll find. Rowan's eyes gleamed with determination. I'll go with you. We've been friends since we were children, and I've always admired your bravery. Whatever lies ahead, we'll face it together. Elara felt a surge of gratitude and relief. With Rowan by her side, she knew she stood a better chance of succeeding. Thank you, Rowan. We'll need all the help we can get. Together, they made their way back to Elara's cottage, where she spread the map out on the table and began to plan their journey. As they studied the symbols and markings, Elara's thoughts drifted to her parents. She could almost hear their voices, urging her to continue their work, to seek the truth and bring an end to the village's eternal night. Tomorrow, we'll set out at dawn, or what passes for dawn in this cursed place, Elara said, her voice filled with determination. We'll follow the map and uncover the secrets that have kept us in darkness for so long. Rowan nodded, his resolve matching hers. We'll find the answers, Elara, and we'll bring back the light. As the night deepened outside, Elara and Rowan continued to prepare, their hearts and minds focused on the journey ahead. The comet had brought more than just light to Nocturne. It had ignited a spark of hope that would guide them through the darkest of nights. The darkness of the eternal night seemed deeper than ever as Elara and Rowan stepped into the forest at the edge of Nocturne. The trees loomed like ancient sentinels, their gnarled branches intertwining overhead, creating a canopy that blocked even the faintest glimmers of starlight. Elara's lantern cast a narrow beam, illuminating their path with a ghostly glow, the flickering light casting long, dancing shadows that seemed to sway with their every step. This forest always gives me the chills, Rowan admitted, his voice barely above a whisper, the weight of his sword a comforting presence at his side. He scanned the darkness, his eyes sharp, every rustle of leaves making him jump. Elara nodded, her own nerves coiled tightly within her. Stay close. The map shows a path, but we'll need to be vigilant. There's no telling what we might encounter. The chill in the air bit at their skin, the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves filling their nostrils. As they moved deeper, the only sounds were their footsteps and the distant hoot of an owl. Elara's thoughts drifted to her parents, their voices a comforting murmur in her mind, echoing the stories they had told her about their adventures. This journey was now her own, the weight of their legacy heavy on her shoulders. This path leads to the old ruins, she murmured, her fingers tracing the map's cryptic symbols. It's said to be the heart of the curse. If we can find the source, we might break it. Rowan glanced around, his eyes sharp, every shadow seeming to hold a secret. Your parents were brave to venture this far. Do you think they knew what they were up against? I don't know, Elara replied, her voice tinged with sadness. But they believed in their mission, and I have to believe in it too. The ruins came into view, a collection of crumbling stone structures covered in moss and ivy, the air growing colder with each step they took. The ancient stones seemed to murmur with the echoes of the past. Elara paused, her lantern casting eerie shadows on the ancient walls. This place feels alive, Rowan whispered, his breath visible in the cold air. He tightened his grip on his sword, the metal cold against his skin. Elara nodded, her heart pounding with the weight of the unknown. The energy here is strong. We need to find the central altar. That's where the map leads. They navigated the ruins, stepping carefully over fallen stones and avoiding the tangled undergrowth. The central altar was a raised platform of black stone, covered in strange, glowing runes that seemed to pulse with an inner light. Elara's heart raced as she approached, her fingers tracing the ancient symbols. This is it, she breathed, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and excitement. The runes on the altar glowed brighter, the air humming with a deep, resonant sound. A cold wind swept through the ruins, carrying with it whispers of forgotten voices. As she began to chant the words inscribed on the altar, the ground beneath them trembled. A beam of light shot up from the altar, piercing the darkness and illuminating the ruins in a brilliant glow. Elara and Rowan shielded their eyes, the intensity of the light overwhelming, the very air around them vibrating with ancient power. When the light faded, the ruins were silent once more. The oppressive darkness seemed to have lifted, replaced by a calm, almost serene atmosphere. Elara lowered her hands, her breath coming in short, heavy bursts. The silence was profound, the absence of the eerie hum almost deafening. "Did it work?" Rowan asked, his voice a whisper in the stillness. Elara looked around, her eyes scanning the now quiet ruins. "I don't know, but something has definitely changed." As they turned to leave, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was an old woman, her face lined with age and wisdom, her eyes reflecting the depth of countless years. She regarded them with a mixture of sadness and gratitude, her presence both comforting and foreboding. "You have done well, young ones," she said, her voice a soft, melodic whisper that seemed to resonate with the very stones of the ruins. "The curse is not yet broken, but you have taken the first step. There is still much to do." Elara and Rowan exchanged a glance, their resolve hardening. "What must we do?" Elara asked, her voice steady, though her heart raced with anticipation. The old woman's eyes twinkled with a knowing light. "You must seek the heart of the forest, where the true source of the curse lies. Only there can the darkness be lifted." With a nod, Elara and Rowan set off, their hearts filled with determination. The path ahead was fraught with danger, but they knew they could not turn back. The fate of Nocturne depended on their courage and their willingness to face the shadows of the past. As they walked, the light of their lanterns flickered against the encroaching darkness, each step bringing them closer to the truth. The forest seemed to close in around them, but their resolve was unshaken, the promise of dawn still glowing faintly on the horizon. Elara and Rowan ventured deeper into the forest, the old woman's cryptic words echoing in their minds. The air thickened, the darkness pressed in, and the silence became oppressive as they moved further from Nocturne. The canopy overhead seemed to close in, blotting out the sky. The sounds of nocturnal creatures heightened the sense of foreboding. Elara held her lantern high, its light barely cutting through the murk. "Do you think we can really do this?" Rowan whispered, his voice laced with doubt. He scanned the dense underbrush, his grip tightening on his sword. "We have to," Elara replied, her tone firm yet betraying a hint of her own fears. "We've come too far to turn back now." The map guided their steps, leading them through twisted paths that brought them ever closer to the heart of the forest. Each step seemed heavier than the last, the air vibrating with an unseen energy. Elara's thoughts drifted to her parents. Their unwavering belief that the curse could be broken spurred her on. After what felt like an eternity of navigating the dense forest, they arrived at a clearing. In the center stood an enormous, ancient tree. Its gnarled branches stretched skyward like skeletal fingers, and its bark was etched with the same glowing runes they had seen on the altar in the ruins. Elara's breath caught in her throat at the sight. "This must be it," she murmured, awe and dread mingling in her voice. "The heart of the forest." Rowan stepped beside her, his face pale in the lantern's glow. "What now?" Elara examined the map, her fingers tracing the intricate lines and symbols. "There should be a hidden entrance at the base of the tree. If we can find it, we'll uncover the true source of the curse." They circled the tree, searching the runic patterns that seemed to shift and change. Finally, Elara found a small, concealed opening just large enough to crawl through. "Here," she called to Rowan, excitement and fear warring within her. "This is the way." One by one, they squeezed through the narrow passage, emerging into a vast, hollow chamber inside the tree. The walls glowed with an ethereal light, casting eerie shadows. In the center of the chamber stood a pedestal, and on it rested an ancient, ornate book. Elara approached the pedestal, feeling the raw power emanating from the book. "This is it," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "The source of the curse." Rowan's eyes widened. "What do we do now?" Elara reached out, her fingers trembling as they touched the book's cover. "We read the incantation. The final part of the ritual is here." It's the only way to lift the curse. As she opened the book, the runes on the pages glowed brighter, filling the chamber with a searing light. Elara began to read aloud, her voice steady despite the terror gnawing at her. The ancient words echoed through the chamber, each syllable vibrating with power. The ground trembled beneath their feet. The walls pulsed with energy, and the runes blazed with blinding light. Elara continued to chant, her voice rising above the cacophony. The tension in the air was almost unbearable, a force that threatened to tear them apart. With a final, thunderous crack, the light exploded outward, engulfing them. Elara felt herself lifted off her feet, her senses overwhelmed. Then, just as suddenly, the light faded, and they found themselves standing outside the tree once more. The oppressive darkness of the forest had lifted, replaced by a serene, otherworldly twilight. The ancient tree stood silent, its power spent. "Did it work?" Rowan asked, his voice a hushed whisper. Elara looked around, her heart racing. Something's changed. The darkness, it's different now. It's as if the forest is at peace. They made their way back to Nocturne, their steps lighter with the hope of a brighter future. As they emerged from the forest, they were greeted by the sight of villagers gathered in the square, their faces lit by lantern light and hope. Alden stepped forward, his eyes filled with a cautious optimism. "Elara, Rowan, what happened? Did you find the source of the curse?" Elara nodded, her voice strong. "We did. We found the heart of the forest and performed the ritual. The curse is not fully broken, but we've taken a significant step." The villagers murmured among themselves, their faces reflecting a mixture of relief and anticipation. Alden placed a hand on Elara's shoulder, his grip firm and reassuring. "You've given us hope, Elara. We'll face whatever comes next together." As the village celebrated this newfound hope, Elara and Rowan stood at the edge of the square, their eyes on the forest. The path ahead was still fraught with danger, but they knew they had the strength and courage to face whatever challenges awaited them. The eternal night of Nocturne had been pierced by the light of their determination, and for the first time in generations, the dawn of a new day seemed within reach. The following day, the village buzzed with a cautious optimism. The air was still cool, but the sense of foreboding that had hung over Nocturne for generations seemed to have lifted slightly. Elara and Rowan, however, knew their journey was far from over. The ritual had been just the beginning. As the sunless sky gave way to a muted twilight, they gathered their supplies and prepared to set off once more. The villagers watched with a mixture of admiration and concern, knowing the dangers that lay ahead. "We must find the heart of the curse," Elara said, her voice steady but filled with determination. "The old woman spoke of it. Only then can we hope to lift the darkness for good." Rowan nodded, adjusting his sword and checking his pack. "We'll need all the strength and courage we can muster. This path won't be easy." They set out, leaving the village square behind and heading back into the dense forest. The canopy overhead seemed even darker than before, as if the forest itself was aware of their mission and was trying to protect its secrets. Elara kept her lantern high, its glow a beacon in the gloom. As they walked, the oppressive silence was broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves and the distant calls of unseen creatures. Elara's mind raced with thoughts of her parents and the task that lay before them. "We're close," she thought, trying to summon their courage and wisdom. Hours passed as they trekked through the forest, the path growing narrower and more treacherous. The map had guided them this far, but the terrain was becoming increasingly difficult to navigate. Rowan moved ahead, using his sword to cut through the underbrush. Suddenly, the ground beneath them gave way, and they tumbled into a hidden ravine. Elara landed hard, the wind knocked out of her. She gasped for breath, looking around to find Rowan. He was a few feet away, groaning as he pushed himself up. "Are you all right?" she called, scrambling to her feet. Rowan nodded, wincing, just a bit bruised. "What is this place?" They found themselves in a narrow, rocky chasm, the walls steep and covered in moss. The air was damp and cool, filled with the sound of trickling water. Elara raised her lantern, its light revealing a series of ancient carvings on the walls. "Look," she said, pointing to the symbols. "These runes, they're like the ones we've seen before. This must be part of the path." Rowan examined the carvings, his brow furrowed. "These symbols, they tell a story. A warning, maybe. We need to be careful." Elara nodded, studying the runes closely. They seemed to depict a great battle, figures locked in combat with shadowy forms. The final image showed a figure standing triumphant, holding a glowing orb. "The heart of the curse," Elara whispered. "It must be what these runes are leading us to." They followed the carvings deeper into the ravine, the path winding and treacherous. The air grew colder, the sense of foreboding returning with each step. The glow from Elara's lantern flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls. After what felt like an eternity, they emerged into a vast underground chamber. The ceiling soared high above, and the walls were lined with more glowing runes. In the center of the chamber stood a stone pedestal, and atop it rested a large, crystalline orb that pulsed with a dark, ominous light. "This is it," Rowan said, his voice hushed. "The heart of the curse." Elara approached the pedestal, feeling the raw power emanating from the orb. She reached out, hesitating for a moment. If we destroy this, it might lift the curse. But it could also unleash something even worse. Rowan stepped beside her, his hand on his sword. "Whatever happens, we'll face it together." Elara nodded, taking a deep breath. She placed her hands on the orb, feeling its cold, smooth surface. The runes on the walls flared brighter, and the chamber began to tremble. She focused her thoughts, recalling the incantation from the ancient book. As she chanted, the orb grew hotter, its light intensifying. The ground shook violently, and cracks appeared in the pedestal. The air was filled with a deafening roar, as if the forest itself was crying out in pain. With a final, desperate effort, Elara uttered the last words of the incantation. The orb shattered, sending shards of crystal flying. A wave of energy surged through the chamber, knocking them both to the ground. When the dust settled, Elara and Rowan slowly got to their feet. The chamber was silent. The oppressive darkness lifted. The runes had dimmed, their power spent. "Did it work?" Rowan asked, his voice echoing in the stillness. Elara looked around, feeling a strange calm. "I think so. The curse, it feels like it's gone." They made their way back to the surface, the forest seeming lighter and less oppressive. As they emerged from the ravine, they were greeted by the sight of the villagers, who had followed them out of concern. Alden stepped forward, his eyes wide with hope. "Elara, Rowan, what happened? Did you lift the curse?" Elara nodded, a weary smile on her face. "We did. The heart of the curse has been destroyed. The darkness should lift now." The villagers erupted in cheers, their faces filled with joy and relief. Alden embraced Elara, his gratitude palpable. "You've done it, Elara. You've saved us all." As the village celebrated, Elara and Rowan stood at the edge of the square, their eyes on the forest. The path ahead was still uncertain, but they knew they had the strength and courage to face whatever challenges lay in wait. The eternal night of Nocturne had been pierced by the light of their determination, and for the first time in generations, the dawn of a new day seemed within reach. The celebration in the village of Nocturne continued late into the night. Laughter and music filled the air, a rare and precious sound in a place so long cloaked in darkness. Elara and Rowan, though weary, felt a profound sense of accomplishment. They had faced incredible odds and emerged victorious, yet an unspoken understanding lingered between them. Their journey was not yet complete. The next morning, the village square was quiet, the joyous revelry replaced by a hopeful anticipation. Elara and Rowan gathered their belongings once more, preparing for what they hoped would be the final leg of their journey. The old woman's words still resonated in Elara's mind. "The curse is not yet broken, but you have taken the first step. There is still much to do." Alden approached them, his expression solemn. "You've given us hope, Elara, but we know this isn't over. What will you do now?" Elara met his gaze, her resolve unwavering. We need to find the true source of the curse. The heart of the forest was just a part of it. There's something deeper, something more powerful that we need to confront. Rowan nodded in agreement, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. We'll finish what we started. With the villagers' blessings, Elara and Rowan set off once more, their path leading them deeper into the unknown. The forest, though less oppressive, still held many secrets. The air was thick with anticipation, each step bringing them closer to the truth. As they ventured further, the landscape began to change. The trees grew taller and more twisted, their branches forming a dense canopy that blocked out even the faintest light. The ground was uneven, covered in roots and underbrush that made progress slow and arduous. Elara paused, consulting the map. According to this, we should be nearing the source. There's an old legend about a guardian that protects the heart of the curse. We must be prepared for anything. Rowan tightened his grip on his sword, his eyes scanning the surroundings. We've faced dangers before. Whatever this guardian is, we'll deal with it. They pressed on, the forest growing darker and more foreboding with each step. The air seemed to hum with an unseen energy, a palpable tension that set Elara's nerves on edge. She could feel the weight of countless eyes watching them, though she saw no one. Suddenly, they emerged into a wide clearing. In the center stood an ancient stone altar, covered in vines and moss. The air around it shimmered with an ethereal glow, and Elara could sense the immense power emanating from it. "This is it," she whispered, her voice filled with awe. "The true source of the curse." Before they could approach, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was a tall, imposing creature, its body composed of twisted roots and bark, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. The guardian of the curse. "Intruders," it growled, its voice like the rumble of distant thunder. "You dare to challenge the ancient power of the forest?" Elara stepped forward, her heart pounding. "We seek to lift the curse that has plagued our village for generations. We mean no harm to the forest." The guardian's eyes narrowed. "The curse is a protection, a barrier to keep the darkness at bay. You know not what you risk." Rowan drew his sword, ready to defend them. "We can't go back. We've come too far." The guardian raised a hand, and the ground trembled. Vines shot up from the earth, wrapping around Rowan's legs and pulling him to the ground. Elara felt a surge of panic but forced herself to remain calm. "Wait!" she cried. "There must be another way. Let us prove our intentions. We only seek to restore balance." The guardian paused, its glowing eyes fixed on her. "Very well. Prove your worth. If you can survive the trial of the forest, you may approach the altar." The ground beneath them shifted, and they found themselves in a labyrinth of twisting roots and branches. The air was filled with the sounds of the forest, amplified and distorted. Elara took a deep breath, focusing her thoughts. "We need to stay together," she said, her voice steady. "Follow my lead." They navigated the labyrinth, dodging traps and avoiding pitfalls. The forest seemed to test their resolve at every turn, but they pressed on, their determination unwavering. Rowan's strength and agility complemented Elara's keen senses and intuition, and together they made their way through the maze. At last, they emerged on the other side, breathless but triumphant. The guardian stood before the altar, its expression unreadable. "You have proven yourselves," it said, stepping aside. "The altar is yours. But be warned, the power you seek to unleash is beyond your comprehension." Elara and Rowan approached the altar, their hearts pounding. The ancient runes glowed with an intense light, and Elara could feel the power thrumming beneath her fingers. "Together," she said, placing her hands on the altar. Rowan joined her, and they began to chant the incantation they had learned from the ancient book. The air around them crackled with energy, and the ground shook violently. Light erupted from the altar, engulfing them in its brilliance. Elara felt a surge of power coursing through her, a connection to the ancient magic that bound the forest and the village. As the final words of the incantation left their lips, the light intensified, and the ground beneath them split open. A wave of energy burst forth, radiating outward and sweeping through the forest. When the light faded, Elara and Rowan found themselves standing in a transformed landscape. The forest was bathed in a gentle, golden light, and the oppressive darkness had lifted entirely. The air was filled with the sounds of birdsong and the rustle of leaves, a symphony of life and renewal. The guardian approached them, its eyes now filled with a calm serenity. "You have done what many thought impossible. The curse is lifted, and balance is restored. Go now, and share this gift with your people." With tears of relief and joy, Elara and Rowan made their way back to Nocturne. The villagers greeted them with open arms, their faces alight with wonder and gratitude. The dawn of a new day had finally arrived, bringing with it the promise of a brighter future. As they stood at the edge of the village, Elara looked out at the transformed forest, her heart filled with hope. "We did it, Rowan. We really did it." Rowan smiled, his eyes shining. "Together, we can face anything." The eternal night of Nocturne was no more, replaced by the warm embrace of light and life. And for the first time in generations, the village thrived, united by the strength and courage of those who had dared to break the curse. Elara and Rowan stood at the edge of the village, the newly transformed forest stretching out before them. The sunless sky, now imbued with a soft golden hue, lent a magical quality to the world around them. But they knew their mission was not yet complete. There was one final challenge to face, a confrontation that would determine the fate of Nocturne forever. As they ventured deeper into the forest, the air grew thick with tension. The path they followed seemed to pulse with a life of its own, guiding them toward an unseen destination. Elara clutched the map tightly, its worn edges a reminder of the journey they had undertaken. "According to this, we should be nearing the heart of the forest," Elara said, her voice steady but filled with anticipation. "The old legend speaks of a final guardian, a protector of the ancient magic that binds this place." Rowan nodded, his eyes scanning the surroundings. "We've come this far. We can't turn back now." They pressed on, the forest growing darker and more foreboding with each step. The trees, once vibrant and full of life, now loomed like twisted sentinels, their branches entwined to form a dense canopy. The ground beneath them seemed to shift and writhe, as if the very earth was aware of their presence. Suddenly, a deep rumble echoed through the forest, and the ground beneath them shook violently. Elara and Rowan exchanged a worried glance, their resolve hardening. They quickened their pace, following the path as it wound through the trees. They emerged into a vast clearing, dominated by an ancient stone structure. The air was charged with energy, and the ground trembled with each step they took. In the center of the clearing stood a massive stone altar, its surface etched with glowing runes. But it was not the altar that drew their attention. It was the figure standing before it. The guardian was a towering being, its form composed of intertwined roots and vines. Its eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, and its presence exuded a palpable power. "You have come far," the guardian intoned, its voice resonating like the rumble of thunder. "But your journey ends here. The ancient magic must remain protected." Elara stepped forward, her heart pounding in her chest. "We seek to lift the curse that has plagued our village for generations. We mean no harm to the forest or its magic." The guardian's eyes narrowed, its gaze piercing. "The curse is a safeguard, a barrier to prevent the darkness from spreading. You know not what you risk." Rowan drew his sword, ready to defend them. "We've faced dangers before. We're prepared to face whatever comes next." With a roar, the guardian raised its arms, and the ground beneath them erupted. Vines and roots shot up from the earth, twisting and writhing like serpents. Elara and Rowan were forced to leap aside, narrowly avoiding the onslaught. Elara quickly regained her footing, her mind racing. "We need to find a way to weaken it," she called to Rowan. "Focus on the runes. They're the source of its power." Rowan nodded, his sword flashing as he slashed at the attacking vines. "Got it. Keep it distracted." Elara darted toward the altar, dodging the guardian's attacks. The air crackled with energy, and she could feel the immense power emanating from the runes. She began to chant the incantation from the ancient book, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. The guardian roared in anger, directing its fury toward Elara. Vines lashed out at her, but Rowan was there to intercept them, his sword a blur of motion. "Keep going, Elara. We're almost there." As Elara chanted, the runes on the altar began to glow brighter, their light pulsating in rhythm with her words. The guardian faltered, its movements growing sluggish as the power binding it weakened. With a final, desperate effort, Elara uttered the last words of the incantation. The runes flared with blinding light, and the ground beneath them split open. A wave of energy surged through the clearing, radiating outward and sweeping through the forest. The guardian let out a deafening roar, its form disintegrating as the energy engulfed it. The vines and roots that had attacked them fell limp, dissolving into the earth. The air around them stilled, the oppressive darkness lifting to reveal a serene, golden light. Elara and Rowan stood panting, their bodies trembling with exhaustion and relief. The clearing, once a battleground, was now peaceful and quiet. "We did it," Rowan said, his voice barely above a whisper. Elara nodded, her heart swelling with triumph. "The curse is lifted. The forest is free." As they made their way back to Nocturne, the forest seemed to come alive around them. The trees, now bathed in golden light, swayed gently in the breeze. The air was filled with the sounds of birdsong and the rustle of leaves, a symphony of life and renewal. The villagers greeted them with open arms, their faces alight with wonder and gratitude. Alden stepped forward, his eyes shining with tears. "You've saved us all. The curse is lifted. Nocturne is free." Elara and Rowan stood at the edge of the village, their hearts filled with hope and determination. The eternal night of Nocturne was no more, replaced by the warm embrace of light and life. And for the first time in generations, the village thrived, united by the strength and courage of those who had dared to break the curse. Did you find the golden star in the video? If you did, leave a comment with the time you saw it to be mentioned in our next video. Thanks for spending a moment of your day with me. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps a lot. If you don't, well, I'll still love you. Thanks for stopping by.